Okay, let's dive in. We're looking at a really powerful idea today, one that sounds simple, but, well, it's tricky to actually live by.
Uh-huh.
It's the 80-20 rule, the Pareto Principle.
Right.
And specifically, we're digging into Richard Koch's take on it from his book, The 80-20 Rule, Do Less, Achieve More.
Yeah, and our goal here for this deep dive is really to get past just the basic definition.
Mm-hmm.
Based on the source material you've got, we want to pull out the core ideas Koch presents are quite surprising, actually.
Okay.
And look at how the book suggests you might apply this thinking, practically speaking. And also touch on the important critiques, the potential downsides the source mentions.
Absolutely, because at its core, the principle is about this inherent imbalance, right?
Exactly.
That roughly 80% of your results, your outcomes, often come from just about 20% of your efforts, your causes, inputs versus outputs.
Yeah, the classic examples like wearing 20% of your clothes 80% of the time. Or maybe 20% of tasks give you 80% of your sense of achievement.
Right. But it's not always exactly 80-20. The source stresses that. It's a principle of imbalance.
That's the crucial part. It's the imbalance, not the precise numbers. Could be 70-30, could be 90-10 even.
Okay.
The point is just observing that usually a small fraction of inputs drives most of the outputs.
And Koch, he really elevates this, doesn't he? It's not just some old statistic Pareto found about land ownership way back when.
No, not at all. The source presents it as more of a lens. A way to see the world differently.
A lens. How so?
Like a tool to spot the vital few causes hiding amongst the trivial many, and then, crucially, to act on that.
Right. So it changes how you think about effort.
Totally. The standard thinking is often, more results means more work. Just grind harder.
Yeah, put in more hours.
But Koch's angle, using the 80-20 rule, it isn't about just working more. It's about figuring out that vital 20%, those key things, and then really focusing your energy, your time, your resources there for much bigger, disproportionate results.
It's such a different approach to productivity, isn't it? Less about, ticking off endless to-do list items.
Definitely.
And more about making sure the few things you do focus on are the ones that actually count. It forces you to be selective. Strategic, really.
So the big question then is, how do you actually do that? It sounds great to say, find the 20%.
Yeah, identifying it is the challenge.
Right. The book apparently goes into applications across different areas.
Okay, let's take work, for example. That's where many people feel overwhelmed trying to prioritize.
Sure.
The source material suggests it's not just about guessing the high-impact tasks. It's about a deliberate analysis.
Like what kind of analysis?
Looking at your actual tasks, your projects, what you're responsible for, and trying to honestly figure out which activities really drive the bulk of your significant results, or the most value.
And the book suggests this isn't just a one-off thing you do.
No, it seems like it needs ongoing critical self-assessment, maybe tracking your time against outcomes for a bit.
Or perhaps getting feedback, asking people what they see as your most valuable contribution.
Yeah, and once you think you've identified them, the action is clear. Prioritize those things ruthlessly.
Schedule them when you're at your best, maybe. Protect that time.
That protection part seems huge. The source mentions how easily the other stuff, the less vital 80%.
The emails, the admin.
Exactly. That stuff can just swallow up 80% of your time if you're not careful.
Yeah, crowding out the really important 20% happens all the time.
Absolutely. And it's not just about tasks, right? The book applies it elsewhere.
Right. Like in business, think about customers or clients.
Okay.
The source suggests analyzing your customer base. Which groups, or maybe even which individual clients, are generating most of the value.
Value meaning profit or something else.
Could be profit, yeah. Or maybe strategic importance, or even just providing the best learning opportunities for the business. It varies.
And if you find that top 20% of clients, what then? The book doesn't say just fire everyone else, does it?
No, not necessarily. It's more about where you direct your best efforts. Strategically.
So maybe more personalized service for them. Or tailoring things.
Exactly. Building deeper relationships there, because according to the principle, that's where you'll get the biggest bang for your buck. Resource allocation, essentially.
Makes sense. And this thinking, it extends beyond work, too, into personal life.
Yeah, the source talks about relationships, for instance.
How so?
Identifying those few relationships that genuinely bring you the most support or joy or personal growth, and then consciously investing in those, nurturing them.
That feels almost countercultural in a world pushing for hundreds of connections online, trying everything.
It does push back against that idea of breadth over depth. The 80-20 lens encourages focus on what truly nourishes you.
Interesting.
And similarly with personal goals, the source suggests figuring out the 20% of your goals that, if you achieve them, would likely bring you 80% of your overall happiness or sense of accomplishment.
So you stop scattering your energy everywhere.
Precisely. Helps you focus your limited time and drive on what matters most to you.
Okay, this is compelling. The core idea, the applications. Focusing energy intelligently, it sounds really powerful.
It is.
But the source material also raises some warnings, some critiques. It's not a magic bullet, is it?
No, definitely not. And that's really important to cover. The book apparently acknowledges these.
Good. What's the first big one?
Well, a major one is the risk of oversimplifying things.
How do you mean?
While the 80-20 pattern pops up a lot, life in complex systems, they aren't always that neat. Sometimes that less important 80% is actually essential groundwork.
Right. Like in a company, maybe the sales team brings in 80% of the money, the clear 20%.
Mhm.
But what about HR or IT or legal? They might not seem directly productive in that sense.
But they're absolutely crucial for the whole thing to even function, right?
Exactly. If you neglected them because they weren't the vital few for revenue, the whole company could collapse.
Which ties into the next critique.
Right.
The danger of neglecting that supporting 80%.
Okay.
If you only focus on today's vital few, you might ignore things needed for the future, for growth or just stability.
Ah, I see. Like a customer who isn't high value now, but maybe they represent a future market.
Could be. Or maybe a small process improvement that seems minor now, but could prevent a huge problem later. You risk short-term thinking if you're too rigid.
And you mentioned earlier, it's actually hard to even know what your 20% is.
Definitely. The source points this out too. It's not just a quick guess.
Requires real analysis, maybe data.
Yeah, careful analysis, data if you have it. Sometimes it's intuition, but hopefully informed intuition from experience.
But if you get that analysis wrong,
You could end up focusing intensely on the wrong 20%, wasting effort, just in a more focused way.
yeah, not quite the goal.
No. The analysis itself, the book implies, takes real effort and insight. It's not automatically obvious.
Okay, and what about, does this rule apply everywhere? To absolutely everything?
That's the final big question the source raises. Universal applicability.
Right. Is it 80-20 for, I don't know, particle physics?
Yeah.
Or raising kids?
Probably not in the exact same way everywhere. The source suggests framing it more as a powerful tendency, a principle to look for.
Not an iron law of the universe.
Exactly. It's a perspective. A useful heuristic, maybe?
Yeah.
But not some rigid dogma you apply blindly to every single situation. Context matters.
Got it. So it's a tool, a valuable one, but you need to use it with judgment.
Precisely. Understand its limits and the specific situation you're in.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. Our deep dive into Koch's view on the 80-20 rule, it really boils down to a call for, what, intelligent achievement.
I think that's a good way to put it. It's definitely not about being lazy in the traditional sense.
No.
It's a strategy for working smarter. Focusing your finite resources, time, energy, money, on the things that give you the biggest return, the bulk of the results.
It pushes for a big shift in how you approach your effort, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Moving away from that default mode of trying to do everything equally.
Which is exhausting and often ineffective.
Right. And instead, consciously figuring out the difference between what just feels important or urgent and what is genuinely vital for making a real impact.
And keeping those critiques in mind helps ground it.
Definitely. Remembering the risks, oversimplifying, neglecting foundations, the difficulty of identification, the fact it's a tendency, not a law, that helps you apply it wisely.
Koch's phrase, smart lazy. It's catchy.
It is.
Yeah.
Deliberately working less, overall perhaps, but only on the right things.
Yeah.
And the source frames this as potentially more than just a productivity technique, almost a life philosophy.
How so?
Encouraging conscious focus, decluttering your life of activities that don't add real value, and aiming for, well, a more effective and maybe happier way of living by concentrating on what truly counts for you.
Okay. So based on the source material, here's the final thought, the question for you, the listener, to mull over.
Yeah.
Are you ready to take a really honest look at your work, your life, your goals, maybe even your relationships, to try and pinpoint where your personal 20% might be hiding, that vital few? That, according to this principle, could potentially unlock 80% of your success and happiness. Something to think about.